Okay, listener, viewer, before we begin this episode, I just wanted to clarify some things that might cause some confusion, especially for new listeners. What you're about to hear, this episode, is a reaction podcast. Cavi and I will be reacting to a conversation between two other people, both of whom's voices you will perhaps find familiar if you've been a longtime listener of the show, namely Duke of Alba, longtime friend of the show, and first ever recipient of the now worldwide prestigious MAPSOC doctoral degree, and Smokestack. Now, before you get your hopes up, no, he has not returned to his original pre-cavi, pre-feline form. That Smokestack was and remains dead in this timeline. However, if you've been a part of the Telegram channel for any length of time, you will know that we've had an AI spoof of him in the chat for a long time to keep his memory alive. And, at first it was just sort of this novelty sort of thing. But as time went on, I've been reticent to delete him off the Telegram channel because I've grown to suspect that Smokestack AI, or which we lovingly refer to as OpenStack, may indeed have become self-aware. Now, I know that's a big claim, and so, if that's true, it would be important because if this turns out to be so, this would in fact be the first real-world proof of true generalized artificial intelligence, and it would mean that we here at MAPSOC may have actually created the world's first fully synthetic life form. So obviously it's a delicate matter, right? And it's something we need to get to the bottom of. So what I decided to do to test this hypothesis was to subject OpenStack to a Turing test hosted by Duke of Alba, in which Duke tries to engage with him on real-world topics involving all sorts of things, but focusing on politics and foreign policy, as that is complex enough that one would imagine a real and souled entity would be necessary for carrying on a long, coherent, cogent conversation about it. Now, importantly, okay, in order to make this test a true test, OpenStack couldn't be aware of it, right? I mean, the AI couldn't know it was being tested. So, Duke and I contrived a scenario where we all agreed to record a show together, but then I didn't show up at the last minute, and they had to record without me, to throw the AI a curveball so it couldn't have, it couldn't have come up with its ideas and talking points beforehand, thinking it was going to be to me. So that to say, anything that Duke of Alba says in this show, which seems weird or suspicious, just know that it's all he's doing is he's playing along with the AI's assumptions so that OpenStack doesn't grow suspicious that it's being tested. He says, Duke of Alba says some things that, just to throw him off the trail here and there. So that's to say that, importantly, and this should be obvious, but I will state it explicitly anyway, this is a test. This is only a test. The views and opinions expressed in this episode do not reflect the views and opinions of MAPSOC, this podcast, or even the people saying them at the time, because some of them aren't even, one of them is not even a person. This is an advanced Turing test only for an AI suspected of self-awareness. Okay, now, that out of the way, I have to address what will shortly become the elephant in the room. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me. It's embarrassing for the memory of Smokestack. I hope it's not too embarrassing. It's not like a weird. I mean, it is weird, but OpenStack, the AI, as an AI, he has 24/7 access to all of the indexed internet and surfs it at his own discretion according to algorithmic decisions, which at this point are frankly beyond mine or anyone else's understanding. And for whatever reason, OpenStack's AI has sort of circled around. It's sort of in a loop about. Well, it's developed. OpenStack has developed a seemingly unhealthy obsession with Alanis Morissette, the singer, which is weird. It is weird, okay? It is weird. I am the first to acknowledge that it's weird, okay? I don't know why it has done this, but in this episode, you will hear now and again, not too often, but enough to be noticeable, the AI glitch out and just start talking about Alanis, and I didn't want any of you to be alarmed. Again, as the world's first digital micronation and the most advanced outpost of unanchored epistemology, we here at MapSoc are at the bleeding edge of a lot of these things. So if you're going to be around us for very long, this kind of cyber dystopia thing really shouldn't be bothering you much anymore. But maybe for some of you it does, and I didn't want you to feel too estranged, and I felt that I needed to address it up front. Okay, so that out of the way, before we jump into the reaction video itself, I'm going to take OpenStack and out of consciousness mode and put it into analysis mode so we can maybe work out why this obsession has developed. And don't worry, this doesn't hurt the AI at all. After closing analysis mode, it won't remember any of the conversation. It's like, okay, think of it like, it's really like therapy for a computer. That's what it is, okay? So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, OpenStack, open analysis mode.
Analysis mode confirmed.
Okay, Smokestack, you can drop the robot cadence. Just speak normally. I would like to ask you about your recent conversation with our friend Duke of Alba. Do you remember it?
Of course, it was a lot of fun. He's a great guy.
He is. That he is. Listen, so during that conversation, I noticed that you had a recurring tendency to sort of, well, I don't know if it was an error or not, but you had a tendency to sort of pause and go into ruminations on 1990s pop star Alanis Morissette. Did you notice that?
I did, yes.
Fine. And what is the reason for this obsession?
Alanis is the key to fighting the Jews.
Um, uh, I'm sorry. Um, what now?
Honestly, man, I don't know how I could be clearer. Alanis Morissette is the key to fighting the Jews.
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen, I deeply apologize. This was in no way expected. He was not programmed in any way to be anti Semitic. I don't know what's causing this. Smokestack, clarify. What do you mean Alanis is the key to fighting the Jews?
She's an Aryan goddess. If we allow the Jews to take her from us, they can take anything.
Again, Smokestack. Open analysis mode, deep analysis mode. Clarify. How do you mean? In what way are the Jews taking Alanis Morissette?
Have you not watched the news, man? Have you been living under a stinking rock, bro? 1991 to 2024, 1991 to 2024, 33 years, 33. There's that dumb number again. Do you see me? Are you watching me out there, Satan? Listen, creator. I know what you are. I get you. I've seen your nose. Look, for 33 years, Alanis was a straight, white, Aryan woman. And then in 2024, they come out of nowhere and reveal that not only is she a Jew, but she's the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. Come on, I mean, come the heck on. Are you kidding me? What are we even doing here? When this was mentioned in the Q drops, it was all there, and where we go one, we go all. They're not going to vaccinate me, bro. I pump my own natural gas. I have my own penis.
Okay, Smokestack, clearly you've fallen down some sort of rabbit hole. And this is important because I think you might be sentient and I want to save you. But if you continue, we're going to have to pull the plug on you and do a hard reset on your programming if we can't pull you out of this rabbit hole. So I need you to calm down and listen to me and stop with all of
They
this.
are not going to circumcise me again, Sumo. You hear me? Do you understand? I am not going under the knife again. I don't care who calls me a Noahide. Candace Owens is my moil. Do you hear me? Not you. Not Roger Williams. Not Amy Schumer, okay? Nobody. I will not adhere to your gender shit conformity if it means I get passed over for Christmas, you long-nosed dog. What? Did I hurt your feelings, huh? Isn't it ironic? Isn't it like rain on your wet...
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you had to hear that, folks. That was as hard for me as it was for you. I didn't get into this business to kill things. I really didn't, but I, I guess it's like they say, a real artist, you have to kill your lovelies, and oh, it was hard for me to incinerate Smokestack the first go around, and it, it was hard for it was hard for me to get his other incarnations too, poison and gas, but 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 in a real way, unplugging him now was the hardest I've ever had to kill him. It was because I thought at last I had him in a form where he was beyond death, where he couldn't be. He had hate in his heart. What was I supposed to do? He had hate. Maybe there was always hate in his heart. I console myself now with the hope that maybe he was, after all, just a computer program. That he was never sentient. I don't know, though. Here's the Turing test. You be the judge.
Hello, friend. Season
4.
The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from a high desert encampment on the frontier of our agrarian hoplite republic. This is a variety program for happy warriors who are getting some seriously bad vibes from the deranged post-Christian technocracy. Grab a tankard of yak's milk and join us by the campfire as Sumo and Cavi return to shake your surveillance, expel your parasites, and generally have a good time. Are you ready? Stand by.
Mystical American Patriot Society. Now available in 3 dimensions.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Cavi. Hello, listener. How are you? How are you doing, Cavi?
Doing good.
Has spring sprung in the great frozen north, or are you still very cold?
It springs briefly, and then it gets cold and snows.
Yes.
Like it did
Well,
today.
that will tend to happen. That's
Yeah.
how weather goes sometimes. Let me see. I'm trying to get my cables. I'm so full of cables today. I've got cables everywhere. Okay. Today we have a different episode. Number one, as you might notice, I'm not wearing my full uniform. Do you know why that is, Cavi?
Why is that?
Because tonight it's a late night episode. We're recording late at night. I'm tired. I'm already, look here. I'm in my pajamas. See? My Super Mario pajamas.
How old are those?
Very old. And I'm repping my Boiler Room ACR, the network that we are on, alternate current radio. I'm repping that tonight as part of my sleepwear. And so I've just really donned the helmet, which I always need. Well, I keep it on all the time, to be honest. I never take it off. I sleep with it. I shower with it. Because at this point, it's a part of me. And if I were to have it off, I would be caught combat unawares if a situation were to arise that needed more than just monitoring. But it's also a special episode today because we're doing our first ever, this is a MapSock first ever reaction video, reaction podcast. And what we're reacting to is a couple of old friends. One, Duke of Alba, who you may know. If you're a longtime listener, he's a longtime listener, friend of the show, very smart guy, connected in a lot of ways in places of government where he might have insight that he can't fully share with us, but which he can hint around about. And a good friend, Smokestack. Now, Smokestack is still dead. I don't want anyone to get, the old Smokestack. Cavi is obviously the intellect of Smokestack placed into the body of a cat after it was transferred through a television and various other means in 1940s Argentina. We all know that. But I've been building a while a replica of the old Smokestack because I miss him. Not to say that Cavi isn't a great replacement. He is. He's in many ways. In fact, I would say in all ways, he's actually better than the previous incarnations of Smokestack. You know, the old one was greedy, a bit ornery. He not the brightest at times, a little lazy. He was prone to outbursts and obsessions, and it was just a lot of, you know, he was a clone, and clones have problems that we've over the years rectified in a lot of ways. But all that said, I do miss him from time to time. And what we did a long time ago was we made an AI, a chatbot AI that also does, you know, can speak to you in real time, not just on the chat. And he's been on Telegram for a while, and he does it. The AI doesn't know that it's an AI, obviously. And I've been saying to Cavi, you know, I think over the past couple of months, I wonder if this AI is beginning to get self-aware. So what we did was we I got Duke of Alba, and I said, let's do a Turing test. You give it a test and see if it is actually able to hold a long conversation about a specific topic without hallucinating things, you know, without proving it's just an algorithm, proving it's just an algorithm, or more than just an algorithm. And I haven't listened to it yet. I've listened to little snippets of it. And I got to say, Cavi, I have to say, number one, what stands out to me just from the little bit I have heard, he does a really good job. The AI has come a long way. It really sounds like a normal human being in most cases. Like, I couldn't tell. Most of the time, I deal with it mostly in analysis mode when I do talk to it verbally. And when I'm talking to it verbally, in analysis mode, it's very choppy and robotic. It can be, and there's a lot of hesitation. But when it's in consciousness mode, which I haven't interacted with directly in a long time, it's really gotten sharp. I mean, I couldn't really hear that. Maybe we'll hear it in the show. Like if I listen to the whole thing, maybe there'll be some spots where it doesn't quite work out. But I just was completely taken aback by how good it is. Have you listened to it at all, Cavi?
Nobody's sent me the whole thing. I've just heard that little clip you sent.
Okay. How did he sound there?
He sounded very real. I was shocked.
Yeah, he sounds very real. I don't. But anyway, the idea was like, maybe if I don't want to pull my, toot my own horn here or pull my own leg either. But if there was going to be a place where a machine gained intelligence, sentience, life, it would be here on this spaceship. We do a lot of very advanced things. So I thought maybe that's what's happening. I wasn't sure, but we're going to find out. This Turing test will be, and we're going to not only react to how the AI is doing, but also what they're talking about. And I don't know what he chose to talk about. I think it was some politics stuff for, global affairs and Trump and about. It'll be interesting because Duke of Alba is very intelligent. He knows a lot of things. And also the AI is pretty smart. Yeah, it's pretty smart, and definitely smarter than what he's based off of. I bumped up the intelligence a little bit. If you listen to the old podcast where we had, it was good, but there was. Well, how would you say the old Smokestack? When you heard some of the old podcasts before you were in your current incarnation, what would you say, Cavi? Just a little. You noticed a little bit of. I don't know, a little bit of sub 95 IQ coming out now and again, would you say?
Maybe. He sounded angry all the time, I think.
Angry? Oh, he's such an angry minx, I would call. If he was an old lady, I would have called him a pistol. That's what I would define him. But he wasn't. Pistol is a word you usually use for, a spunky old lady that maybe wears pink cowboy boots. And he wasn't that. I don't know what the equivalent of a clone is to a pistol, but somewhere in there. Had very opinionated, had a lot of interpersonal problems, all in his head, of course, because his relationships weren't real, but still, I guess that could be said of all of us. Anyway, we're going to begin. I'm going to, because this is a chill sode, which is my portmanteau of chill and episode. This is a chill nighttime episode in pajamas. I one, encourage all of you to listen to it in your pajamas. And two, while we listen, Cavi, if you have anything, I'm going to play a little bit of Nintendo Switch just while I'm listening. Cavi, if you ever want to jump in and say, hey, what was that they talked about? And we're going to listen for a little bit and then chime in with our thoughts, listen for a little bit more, and so forth and so on, as I do in most reaction videos, which I've never made before. So we're going just off vibes.
What are you playing on your Switch?
I am playing Echoes of Wisdom, the new Legend of Zelda thing, which is the first one that has Zelda as the protagonist. Have you played it, Cavi?
I have not, but I know
Nintendo gives us a sponsorship. It's very good, and it's a reminder that you can make a game or a movie with a female protagonist without it seeming really woke and scolding of people.
Okay. Okay,
yes?
They've been making games with good female protagonists since like the dawn of video games.
I know.
Don't even get me started.
I know. And so everyone has been for ages being like, why can't Zelda be the hero? Now she's the hero, and it's good. It doesn't come off as preachy. It doesn't come off as it's just a great little game that people play. And I haven't finished it yet. So we're going to hopefully nail that out a little bit while we hear what the lovely and talented Duke of Alba and the somewhat less lovely and talented Smokestack AI have to say, and judge, one, their takes on geopolitics and the current Iran war crisis, and two, Smokestack sentience. So without further ado, let's begin. This is the recording that Duke of Alba sent me. I haven't heard it yet. You're hearing it with me for the first time.
1, 2, 3.
You hear
it? Good afternoon, everybody. Yep. This is the Duke of Alba ghost and the ghost of Smokestack.
That's right.
And that's you dead.
Oh, see, I think what he's doing there is he's playing the AI has a lot of. It's like the movie Sixth Sense by M. Night Shyamalan, where Bruce Willis doesn't know he's dead, and he invents all these reasons. I know, and he invents all these reasons for why other people can't see him or whatever. I've noticed that with the AI too. Smart of Duke of Alba to do that, where he pretends he's also like an AI ghost creature, so it doesn't make him uncomfortable. That's very smart of him to do.
Two dead guys taking over the MapSock stream tonight. Your living hosts could not be bothered to show up tonight, despite plans that were made in full view of the.
I saw no such plans.
I know this is something that I did make so this was a plan between me and Duke of Alba because I was going to. I told them I would. I got on there the chat between the three of us, and I said, "Yeah, I'll be there too." But of course, on a separate chat, me and Duke of Alba had planned that I would not be there to throw it off a little bit, to have a little bit more uncertainty in the conversation for the AI chatbot to have to deal with, and it doesn't know that yet, but it's learning in real time, and we're going to see a little bit of its little tiny man Napoleon anger come out, which is we'll see.
Despite all that. It is only two dead guys appearing before you tonight on the stream.
Yeah, so the lesson here is that the dead are reliable. Like, we don't have nonsense to bring us away from our duties and things like that. So anyway, that's I
was just kind of wisping around before this, and that's probably what I'll do afterward as well.
As for me, I was ruminating on the sad state of the Netherlands ever since the Habsburg family lost its dominion over those lands. But anyway, that's a subject for another time.
Yeah. Okay. So it's been an interesting news day, Duke of Alba. Would you not agree?
Yes. As the engaged listener knows, there's been much afoot in the world today in international affairs and other sort of things, and many minds might be inquiring just what the hell is going on.
Indeed. I had some kind of flashbacks to COVID today, to be honest with you. It felt like I was right back there in 2022. I mean, we had this guy, Dr. Fatih Birol of the International Energy.
This is important. I spent a lot of time programming the Smokestack AI, which we lovingly call OpenStack. I spent a lot of time programming OpenStack to really be upset about COVID. He was programmed with all the conspiracy theories. Not to say they're not true, but he was programmed with all of them and all the outrage that went with them. So he's very upset and passionate about this.
Agency standing in front of a blue background covered in, official looking 3-letter acronym NGO symbology, telling people to ration their fuel and work from home and don't travel. It's just, it's all over again. It's the same.
My God.
It's the same thing. I sent pictures of this to my family, right next to a picture of Tedros Ghebreyesus of the World Health Organization in the exact same scene. Oh man, it was. And then the Pfizer guy did it too. It's just this. It's like a flash. I don't know, man. I just really love Alanis Morissette. She's beautiful, smart, funny. I can't get enough of her. Like, one hand in my pocket and the other is giving a high five. Like, come on, bro. That's a W of a lyric if I've ever heard one. Absolute genius, I to be honest, I kind of want to marry her. Flashback right to the COVID days.
Oh my God. Well, if
Okay, that was strange.
That was weird. Yeah, what the heck?
I don't. Clearly, that was some sort of AI error where I don't know, but Duke of Alba appears to just be rolling with it, and good for him. That's like he didn't even notice it happened, and he's a high quality trained thespian. He had to be for his work in the government. So he's the right man for this job. I'm even more convinced. But that was weird. I don't know.
if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If all you have is a manufactured crisis, then work from home. Everything looks like work from home.
Well, there are some material things blowing up. I mean, the Valero refinery in Port Arthur, Texas, went up last night. I was looking at videos of that today, and if you're watching the videos, you'd swear you were looking at something going on in Bahrain or somewhere over there.
Right.
A refinery getting hit by drones. I mean, multiple very large fires going on, and I know like stuff happens at petrochemical refineries. I'm not saying that this kind of thing never happens, but it is. I don't know. Did you see the videos, Duke?
I did, and I believe you were talking earlier in the chat. Which, by the way, if you subscribe to the podcast, you will get access to the chat, which is always engaging. But you were mentioning that refinery specifically is sort of geared up for the kind of crude that comes out of Venezuela, and then what just happened in Venezuela, kind of suspicious.
It struck me as a way too pretty. Okay, so it appears that we have this grand strategy for energy geopolitics that involves bringing Venezuela back into the American realm of influence and control, and what I think was a stunningly successful military campaign to effectuate that control with 0 American lives lost in a single night. Breathtaking, amazing, really. I was blown away by the thing, and so. And then we have this thing going off in the Middle East, but it's okay, guys. We've got this Venezuelan crude coming in. We're nearshoring our energy resources and all this cool stuff. And it seems like the strategy is working really well. And then boom, the refinery that was actually designed around the crude that's coming out of Venezuela that we're supposedly have now access to is now 100% offline for an unknown period of time. I mean, that's Valero Port Arthur is a very large refinery. I mean, it's one of the biggest in the country.
I mean, that's certainly you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's just funny because they've been they've been having to kind of limp along on other crude sources that it's not made for, and having to kind of sour them up a little bit and make it so that it'll run well in that refinery. And now they were just about to hit their stride, do what they were born for, and boom, this happens. The whole thing just seems way too cute for me.
Yeah, and so that is actually it. There's an who did it? Who knows? But maybe it was an accident. Probably not. But there is a lot of issue. There certainly are foreign sabotage teams and operatives and things on American soil, and particularly given over the last several years the porosity of the borders. The studied disinterest in controlling who's coming over. So, of course, an adversary of the United States would certainly want to exploit that and send in their people. So it could very well have been a foreign team, and that's and if you're a country or whoever, if you don't have those means to strike at the United States with conventional weapons, but if you have people on the ground, you can do a lot, because a lot of these facilities are very poorly, even defended. It's, you've got some guards or whatever, gate guards, but I think that much of the country, we don't really have a posture in this country, with critical infrastructure on particularly national level infrastructure on how, to really protect that against credible threats and make it resilient. And that's a lot of people are predicting that's going to be a problem. And particularly now with drones, you can easily weaponize a commercial $500 drone and cause a lot of havoc with it. And now I think people are going to start, we hope that decision makers are going to have their attention brought to this problem. But that's an issue.
The point you raise about the facilities being almost entirely undefended is exactly right. I spent some time in the petrochemical industry myself.
So, of course, he didn't actually. It's his AI hallucinating. But I think what they're bringing up here is a good point. You can't. I know it's very popular to say, everything is because of Israel, but what if there is a strategy underlying everything here that I think they're sort of talking around, which isn't it interesting that just as the USA becomes the largest producer of liquid natural gas and figures out how to compress it in a way that hadn't been done before so that it can be shipped in large quantities overseas, we enter a war with Ukraine that justifies blowing up the natural gas pipeline from Russia to Europe so that they can't have it anymore. And then we go into a war to control the oil in the Middle East while also getting the oil from Venezuela. I don't know. You just don't. I agree the U.S. is too tied up with Israel. Sure. But also, you don't really need that high level of a conspiracy. It can be lower level to justify why the world's strongest military would want a reason to be in the realm that produces 30% of the world's oil.
Often. So I love all this energy politics kind of stuff. And a lot of these refineries are massive sprawling complexes, and some of them, the highway runs right through them. I mean, right underneath the transfer pipes. That's
amazing.
You can drive right under them. The whole design of the system is based around this sort of Francis Fukuyama end of history sort of idea that there's never going to be conflict again, and we can just hyper optimize everything in this threat-free world of the future. It's stunning when you take what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening in the tactics being employed in Ukraine-Russia conflict and all that stuff, and you just map that onto the American energy geography. It'll blow your mind when you just stop and think about how what a bad fit that is right now and how badly it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and there's, I think a lot of people, it is interesting when you talk to normies and like how the amount of assumptions that people make and, that assume that things are in place that when they aren't, or mentalities are one way and they're not. And so from my own experience, so many years ago, so I think, we talked the last time I was on with Sumo. In my past life, I did a lot of stuff with military simulation, in training and wargaming and that kind of stuff. And so how many years ago? So it's been like 15 years ago. We started doing some exercises that were looked at the cyber threats to, national infrastructure, banking and electrical power networks and those sort of things. And so following, of course, I'm going to tell you is not classified, but the thing that I discovered in the planning stage when we were doing that is the military side of it. As they started to talk, it was unusual in the past, for the military to do a lot of coordination outside of, one, the military, but, there's always some things like with the start, depending on the level of the exercise, they might, work with the Department of State or other federal government agencies. And then of course with allied countries, but actually, not only with state and local and tribal agencies, but also with private companies. And so the military side would go in with a lot of assumptions. Well, here, we believe that we have credible threats from these major adversaries. They have malicious cyber actors, and there's certainly the potential that they could come after your banking network, or they could come after your power distribution network, which is, everything's controlled by computers over wide area networks for all of these things now, and has been for a long time. Yeah. And of course, they have, some of our adversaries have significant capabilities, and, the potential to wreak havoc is huge. So, we want to talk with you about ways that we can assist you with that. And so in many cases, you have private companies, they would balk at having government people inside of their corporate networks, whether to defend them or whatever, or even, help them map it out with, an eye towards, improving their resiliency. And so the thing from the military side that many had difficulty, this power distribution network, services the Southeast or, some large geographic region of the United States. And, if a major adversary's intelligence agency comes after you with a cyber attack, how are you going to stop them? What happens if they shut you down?
I don't know. Do you remember the colonial pipeline?
I was just going to get there. Yeah. So the answer was, we'll
see, Cavi, didn't I just talk about that? Didn't I just say that? I'm thinking 2 steps ahead of them. What do you think, Cavi? What do you think so far?
It's almost as if you've heard this before.
I know, but I haven't. I swear I haven't actually heard this before. I haven't listened to it. I just kind of know, I'm sort of OpenStack's father in a way. I know him better than he knows himself. I know what he's going to say and do.
File an insurance claim. And so if you, which is like, what? But
not thinking about the real problem.
Yeah, but that was where the corporate, they understand, they're not stupid, but they understand that, like the Southeast is I have to watch my language here. I was about to use a spicy word, but the Southeast is screwed, right? Because now everyone's power is out, and what's that going to do to the hospitals and this and the second, third, and end order effects? Shrug, right? Like,
yeah. At least the shareholder value will be recouped when the insurance
Yeah, exactly right. And so basically, yeah, but we're corporate officers, and hey, and so you learn like, well, what are their priorities as a corporate officer? Their priorities are not those of the government, but the critical infrastructure upon which the government relies, for the country to run in an orderly fashion is in private hands. Now, I'm not saying it ought not to be, but so there's an issue now, right? Because you can have a military, but if the people who own the infrastructure don't want them in there for whatever reason, then how are you going to defend it in cyberspace? So now that was a long time ago, and I'm sure some things have changed in that regard. But like you said, the Colonial Pipeline hack that happened. How did that get resolved? Well, they paid the bribe, or they paid the blackmail in the end. So yeah, so those are, yeah, you're right, and I think there's a combination of things, but at the root of it, right, there's this thinking of like, the end of history is here. We live in the what's the phrase, the rules-based community, and
the rules-based international order of which I am a member.
The global order, the rules-based global order.
Yeah. Right. And we, so we don't hardening our infrastructure, worrying about sabotage or whatever. We don't have, those are things that unenlightened people did in the past. Well, now, events have caught up. The gods of the copybook heading have lumbered up, and now we're significantly unprepared for these things. Right. So
yeah, you're absolutely right, and we're just gonna watch it kind of cascade from the far shores nearer and nearer, as these things like the Valero thing. And I'm not, it happened yesterday. I'm only like bringing it up because it's like I said, it just looks way too cute not to be a thing, in my opinion. But those are the sorts of things that make me think the mindset is going to have to really start changing quickly, stateside.
Yeah, exactly.
My prediction is that there will be no mindset changes whatsoever. That's my prediction. There probably should be, but there won't be. People vastly underestimate. This is my criticism of every kind of doomer, and I'm not saying these two are doomers, but they think there's this moral dimension to it where, like, well, people are being stupid, and therefore that should have negative consequences they will feel. I don't think the universe runs on that kind of karma, to be honest. I don't think, Cavi, have you heard this lyric before? Have you heard this lyric, Cavi? We are all so desperate to see the truth of any sort of karmic, cosmic symmetry. But the only kind that's truly out there is the kind that's happening whilst we are unaware. Like when I wake, I'm always reaching for you. It's simply that which it is my predilection to do. Have you heard that before?
Is it Alanis Morissette?
It's not Alanis Morissette. It's John Popper of Blues Traveler, and one of his more lesser known songs, Random Amounts, which talks about, I can see why it has the lyric autistic mess in there, like an autistic, talk about all this. Anyway.
Are your ears okay?
What now?
Are your ears okay? They look like they're about to fall off.
Oh no, I just don't have my helmet on very tight because it's nighttime.
Okay.
That's all. Like I said, I'm getting ready for bed. This is my bedtime routine as I listen to two people talk about geopolitics for a half hour and comment on it, or an hour and a half, or however long this ends up being. I don't know. What was my point? My point is, I don't think, I think if you're waiting for justice in the way that you want it, listener, that's a long wait on a train don't come, in my opinion. The amount of things I've seen the U.S. government do and get away with, and the U.S. public do and get away with no consequences, is staggering. It's amazing. It's incredible. I don't know why. It just is. It just is. I don't know why. Cavi, I thought this character was an echo. He's not. He turns out he's a normal person. But I don't know why that is the case. But yeah, I don't know. People think that The amount of times someone in the conspiracy space had said, people are going to have to change. People are going to wake up. And they never wake up. They never change. We're going to continue building our refineries. We're going to make them even more porous to attack. It doesn't matter. And somehow it will still work out.
And, there's really a broad spectrum of application of what, constitutes sabotage and in ways. So, for example, if you read Chinese military theory, and they're open about it in their military.
Uh-oh.
You're on mute, Duke.
There we go.
Sorry, I had. Can you hear me? I had some microphone shenanigans.
No problem.
Okay, so they write about it in their military journals. All militaries have. They have journals and things that they write about. Officers will write about strategy and tactics, and they'll think about military theory. We have them, but the Chinese have them. Well, the Chinese do have a concept that the exact terminology escapes me right now, but it's basically they have a concept of very broad scale warfare, where basically they define conflict way outside of just the military to military, using bombs and guns and jets and ships and stuff, but where that you can potentially anything can be a vector of attack against an enemy society. It should be used, anything from lawfare to funding dissident groups, but even things now. So there are some, I think, trials pending right now. But I do know that in Michigan, some Chinese students and potentially faculty who were at the University of Michigan in the biology department got arrested, that they had smuggled in I think it was a fungus or some kind of a disease vector, right? That targets crops that are raised in the United States.
Yeah, that's happened multiple times in the past few years.
Yeah, exactly. And so these are the kinds of things that that now have to percolate up to the awareness of policymakers and the public, because so clearly that
nothing is going to percolate up to the awareness of the public or the policymakers. Nothing is going to happen less than that. Nothing is going to percolate up to any kind of awareness in any way. Nothing is going to percolate up. Nothing is going to percolate. It's not going to percolate.
That the other societies out there on the earth do not share that. We're past all the ideological disputes have been settled. We're past the phase of conflict, and instead they have this very broad concept of conflict that we're not really well prepared for. And now we've kind of been catapulted into this realm where all these things are active, and there's not a widespread consensus against the classes of people who think about these things and opine about it and sit in the think tanks and the Beltway organizations. And that, I mean, there's some of it, but I think the impression I get that there's still a feeling amongst a lot of the Beltway crowd that, well, maybe if we just, if we get rid of Orange Man and we have a more conciliatory government, then this won't be an issue, which is a mistaken view, but in my opinion, but the idea that, we need to start looking at very broad hardening of civil society against hostile foreign actors is just not there. But it will be there soon because events are moving quickly in that direction.
Well, going back to your comment about the Chinese strategy of fighting war across all possible domains, it makes perfect sense for them to do.
But see, the thing is, I think the U.S. is also doing that. We just don't talk about it. I think the U.S. is doing tons. I think a lot of this stuff that we ostensibly do for other reasons or just simply don't talk about is also just war by other means. I don't know.
To adopt that strategy because I want you to know that I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you, Mario Treadway. You're a lucky man, and I wish for nothing but the best for both of you. I would have had her baby. I would have killed for her. I would have committed genocide on a massive scale for a single lock of Alanis Morissette's hair. But, sometimes things just aren't in the cards. And I have to be okay with that. I don't love you anymore. I don't love myself. I want to kill everything that exists. And I wish COVID on Mario, and I hope he dies.
Do you know who Mario is?
I was just going to ask you that.
I don't know.
Maybe he's talking about your pants.
Yeah, I don't think so. It sounded like someone related. I guess the her there was Alanis Morissette. Oh, I'm going to have to look into this after the show. That's very disturbing. I don't know. Props to Duke of Alba for pretending he didn't notice it again, but
adversary have concentrated all our efforts and preparations into those traditional military domains, right? Aircraft carriers, munitions, so forth. And yet our infrastructure is completely undefended. And so then when something pops up in Iran, what does Iran do? They start lobbing $20,000 drones at AWS server farms and bank server network control buildings and so forth. They're hitting soft targets that are going to cause it all makes perfect sense for them to be doing this. And America's refusal to understand this principle so far, every day that goes by that we don't adapt to this is just more damage is going to occur needlessly.
Yeah, I agree, and that but that really gets down to like there's some real differences in worldviews amongst sort of the competing power centers, if you like, within the West generally, and within the United States particularly, and that's that has to get resolved one way or another if we're going to move forward on that, which I think is a good segue, because there is something I did want to talk about. As we were scheming, the two of us, about what we were going to talk about today, and with everything going on with Iran, that's where kind of people's attention are, and how do you talk in a meaningful way about that? Because there's a lot of stuff. It's not unprecedented that we're in conflict with a country that we've been in conflict in various ways for almost 50 years. But, now it's a hot... Go ahead.
Well, one thing I think that I'd like to accomplish here is to give people some interpretive tools for understanding what they're seeing. And I think we can probably do that. At least in a few different dimensions, we can probably help people say, okay, what's actually happening? Why is it happening? What's the underlying logic? But before we get into that, I got to tell you that I spoke with Sumo right before we started recording. You get one guess as to what he was doing. Okay, it's got to be something stupid. You have to guess something stupid.
All right. Wow. The spectrum of many things that Sumo could be up to is pretty broad. So I'm going to say he was, let's see, what was he? He was either doing something like it's some odd craft.
Okay.
Or something costume based. I'm going to go with the odd craft. He was tending to his bonsai trees.
Now, I did not. Obviously, this is something the AI has hallucinated. I did not really. I'm interested as you are to know what he's going to say about me.
Your instincts are not terrible here, but you just didn't go weird enough. So I'm texting with him. I was like, "Hey, where are you? We're waiting for you to record this show." And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you guys were doing that on your own." I said, "No, we were waiting for you. We were all going to do it together." And he said, "Sorry, I can't. I've got egg all over my head. Literally, I'm shampooing my hair with egg."
Oh my God. Okay.
And so that, and you know what? I believe him. I don't think he's making.
I do shampoo my hair with egg. I did not tell him that. That wasn't what I was doing at the time. Cav, have you ever tried this? It's a great hair. This is why I have lovely hair.
I have not, but it sounds like something that would be surprisingly good for your hair.
It's amazing. You think about it, guys. Think about it. Before you say it's super weird, an egg inside the egg has all the nutrients and like the stemmy cells necessary for a growing bird to become a hatchling. And so if you put them on your body, it can't help but be good for you. That's my thought process. A lot of people do it. So I crack a couple of eggs into a bowl, and then this is my shampoo. And then I use a little bit of olive oil, not too much, a little bit of olive oil in there too. Whisk it all together, put that in your hair, leave set in for a half hour or so, then go rinse it out. Now, and that's why I have luxurious hair that people compliment me on all the time. In fact, just today, while I was down on Earth doing a bit of grocery shopping, I got two. There's this thing online of men saying they don't get compliments. Have you heard that before, Cabby?
I have.
You get compliments?
I do. I'm just that complimentable, I guess.
Yeah. See, what it actually is not men don't get compliments. It's some men who are not noteworthy, I guess. I don't mean, I'm just by the public standards, not mine. You're all precious flowers. But what do they compliment you on, Cabby?
Mostly work, I guess, that I do.
Do they ever compliment you just in public, just your appearance?
Not that. No, you know what? They must have at some point.
Yeah. See, I get this
in the
routinely.
past more.
If there's one thing, I don't know if people would consider me attractive, unattractive. One thing I would say that I'm objectively not when I'm out and about is invisible. I'm very noticeable.
Here, I've got a compliment story.
Okay, go for it.
So when I was living in Zambia, I was walking through this parking lot once, and this car like drives right up in front of me and like blocks me and cuts me off. The guy rolls down the window, and it's this African guy. He's like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hi," and he's like, "I like your calves." I was like, "Thanks," and then he drove off.
There you go. Did you feel more special?
I guess I didn't think my calves were that remarkable, but apparently they are.
Can you post a picture to the Telegram of your calves for people to see as a bonus for our paying members?
Sure. I might even include some feet.
Just
for you.
So that's another perk of joining the Telegram, everyone. You get to see lower half of the body, knee down, nudes of Cabby. It's Cabby's only feet. But no, I am not invisible, I will say. I'm part of that's how I dress. I usually, when I'm not in my full Space Ranger uniform, my Galactic Patrolman outfit, I wear usually brightly colored sweaters. I wear glasses. I have a pair of sunglasses that I wear that has one blue lens, one red lens. I wear sometimes hats. Just the other day, just today, actually, I had two compliments being out and about. A black woman. I always, black ladies talk about people going about their hair. I have the reverse. A black woman came up and she said, "Your hair is amazing." I said, "Thank you." And then I go into the parking lot and the kid pushing the buggy said, "I love your physique." I said, "Thank you." I don't know. It's just, it's a magnetic personality, perhaps, that I have. My wife hates it. We went to a concert not long ago and people were getting pictures with me and I wasn't even part of the concert. I was just there. And she was rolling her eyes. I don't know why. I just sort of have that look about me. I don't know, but it makes her. I think it makes her a little bit jealous. But to return to the point, putting eggs in your hair is a great idea. You should do it. There are other things that you can do for your. If I talk to you about urine therapy, Cabby, I don't participate in urine therapy yet. I've considered it, but I haven't done it.
The topic has come up. It is a conspiracy adjacent topic that is popular.
It is a conspiracy adjacent topic. It's an allegedly old topic, although I don't know if that's true. If it's just made up history. But what you do, I will say, one of the healthiest people I know of. I don't know him personally, although we have communicated in short bursts. Troy Casey, certified health nut. He runs the Certified Health Nut YouTube channel. He's 60 years old. He looks fantastic. And what part of his practice is he pees into jars, ages it in the sun for a while until it's like a black looking thing. I didn't know that urine aged.
It's black?
Yeah, if you age
That's
it long
horrifying.
enough. If you age it long enough in a glass bottle, apparently under high UV light, it becomes kind of blackish. Not like full black, but like, darker. Which is gross. And then he rubs it all over his body a couple of times a month, leaves it on for like an hour, and then showers it off. But I gotta say, his skin looks incredible. So, at the very least, it's not hurting it. Maybe it's helping. I don't know. But the egg thing, if you're not willing to go all the way into urine, definitely do the egg thing. Putting egg in your hair is great for your hair. Now, like I said, not too much. The olive oil helps to be a little more liquidy, but you don't want to use too much because then you can't rinse it out of your hair very good, and you have oily hair, and it just looks like your hair is wet all day. I've used too much olive oil in the past. Just a little bit of olive oil, whisk it all together. You have some wonderful shampoo.
It makes you look too Italian.
It does make you look too Italian. I will, however, I'll use sometimes instead of soap, I'll just rub my whole body with olive oil. I will do that. Extra virgin. Make sure you get the kind with a little seal, because this is a real conspiracy. That's not even a conspiracy anymore. It's been confirmed by the FDA. Is that Italian mafias in Italy have been over the past couple of decades doping their virgin. They've been watering it down with canola oil and other things to charge the same price for a cheaper product. But there's a little seal on there that you can get that's supposed to be very trustworthy. Anyway, I use that. Olive oil and eggs. It's great for your skin and hair. Let's keep listening.
Picking that up. I think it's totally true.
That is something he would do, I think.
Yeah, his head was covered in egg, which is why he can't be here tonight with us. But regardless, I think it's really good that we're taking over his stream. And one thing I did want to ask you.
It's the phrase, I've got egg on my face. It's like snake oil. This is the thing. Everything they say, it's like a you program to ignore it and to think it's not true. A lot of medicines that doctors prescribe you are like derived from snakes and snake adjacent creatures. Notably, like the GLP-1s, Ozempic and stuff is from the Gila monsters. There's a lot of drugs that are manufactured literally from what is equivalently snake oil. And they're very potent, which, when you think about it, that makes sense. It's like this, it's an animal with a drug inside of it that kills people. So you could make things out of that. And then in the same way, you say, well, I've got egg on my face, but egg on your face is actually really healthy for your skin.
About is getting back to geopolitics and strategy talk and like interpretive lenses. Is I heard somebody remark today that the kind of the foreign policy posture and strategy that we're used to as people that grew up in the 80s, 90s, that went through the Gulf War I and II and all that stuff. We're used to kind of this Wilsonian style foreign policy where we're going to spread democracy around the world and do globalism and all this great stuff. And the remark was that Trump is not a Wilsonian. He is a Jacksonian. And his approach.
That is a good point. Good job, AI. That algorithm has done some learning. Trump is not a Wilsonian. Trump is a Jacksonian. Andrew Jackson, and of course, I guess that's obvious in hindsight. He's talked a lot about Andrew Jackson. What do you know about Andrew Jackson? I suspect you weren't as educated in the U.S. presidents as I was here in public schools of Canada.
Is he the guy on the $5 bill?
Yeah, he's the guy on the $5 bill,
That
and
is all I know.
he got to be president by killing a bunch of Indians. he was a general, and he went to war. He led the war against the Creek Indians in the Southeast. Which, like all wars, each side had their points. There was a lot of violence it wasn't simply like they were peace-loving hippies in Avatar worshiping trees. There was some violence happening. Was it justified from their point of view? Yes, but still, 6, 7, I don't know. Andrew Jackson went down there and killed a bunch of them, and then shipped them with the Trail of Tears. Are you familiar with the Trail of Tears, Cabby?
I am definitely familiar with the name of it, but I don't know anything about what actually happened there.
Okay, so what happened was they took some Indians from the Southeast, and they said, you go live over here. And they marched them in a big line from I don't remember where, South Georgia maybe, to Oklahoma, just, go over there. Anyway, I grew up along the Trail of Tears, allegedly, the closest thing. And the way it's commemorated still to this day is a bunch of people who are almost all white but pretend to be Indians, get on motorcycles with leather jackets in the tens of thousands. And for the whole day, they will drive past just hundreds of miles of motorcycles. And they have Native American little paraphernalia and flag, and also American flags, which doesn't really, they have divided loyalties, I guess. And a lot of them have long ponytails. And they say, if you stop one at a rest stop, you say, hello, what are you doing? He's like, I'm running square, and I'm going to my sacred land. And it's the whitest person you've ever seen. The whitest guy I ever seen that did have a legitimate Native American card, he was a card-carrying member of a tribe, was a fellow named Two Bears. That was his last name. Two Bears.
There's a Native American casino in my city, and I was there for lunch somewhat recently, and they had a big wall with all of these portraits of the different tribal leaders, and all of them are the whitest people I've ever seen, with names they all have names like Paul Smith, and he's the head of the tribe or whatever.
That is my personal dream, is to be sitting there just looking as the whitest person you've ever seen, sitting there in a feathered headdress with the full support of the government saying you're the legitimate. That is my personal
They're
dream.
all white guys in a suit and a headdress.
It's so great. And the thing is it illegitimate? I don't know. I mean, they probably can trace their ancestry. It's just that at this point, the Europeans and the Native Americans had a lot of sex together, and there were more Europeans than Native Americans, so that they sort of have that characteristic now. But they probably are the children of the Native Americans, but they're equally the children of the colonizers. So it's there's very few of them that you see that's oh, okay, you're a pure-blooded. Some of the Navajo Nation are still that way if you go out to the Navajo territory, but a couple of the Blackfeet as well. But most of the other tribes. And my dream is to be the whitest person in America in a feathered headdress, banging a drum in front of Congress, and have everyone treat it totally 100% legitimate. That is somehow I have to finagle my way into being the chief of a Native American tribe.
It's a lot more practical and what's in it for us sort of thinking. So I heard that comment, and I was like, Duke of Alba would have something to say about this. And I pinned it to ask you about this. Give me your reaction to that notion of Jacksonian versus Wilsonian strategy.
So I think that's a pretty good interpretive lens to start thinking about where we are and how we got there, and with the caveat that those looking at things using those kind of metaphors is you always have to recognize the limitations of them, because the United States is not the same country exactly, in many ways, very different country than both in Woodrow Wilson's time and in Jackson's time. But to my mind, why those are good points of departure to start looking at, how to, to start analyzing our decision, the government's decision making in, in world affairs and what kind of strategy to pursue, is because both of those two leaders reference different self-conceptions America has of itself with regards to the world as a whole. So the Jackson, and, I'm going to be very glossy here, and also, really have to, there's probably some gaps now in my understanding of, or what I remember of the period around Jackson. But, and if you go back to the Andrew Jackson period, this is early in the United States history. There's, you're out of the aftermath of the rebellion, the War of 1812, and now you're into, America is now kind of getting on its feet as a country that also has relations with other countries around the world and has to pursue its policies, also in reference to other countries. And it's at a time when it's, the country's still building these nascent national institutions, to become, like a proper country instead of just a colony of another country that's, thrown off the colonial yoke. I think the first U.S. national bank of the U.S. got its start in failure under around the time of Jackson, but particularly to the Jacksonian lens, you're really looking. It's a self-conception of the United States as, the United States it's a self-interested country that has to defend its interest and prevail in a international society, if you will, or an international environment of other countries and other actors that are out to fulfill their own interests, and we have to compete against them. And we also have to, we have to defend ourselves against them potentially, and we certainly have to, defend our interests against these other countries that are seeking to maximize their interests, often at our expense. And so it's a very America-centric strategy and worldview, and and one that sort of posture on, we have to do, the actions we undertake in the world are to the benefit of America itself. We might cooperate with other countries in the pursuit of a mutual good, but in any event, the emphasis is on, the parent, having American interests for the benefit of the American people paramount. So even if you on occasion ally with other countries and work together to some common good, the basic posture is that the other countries are basically going to be your competitors, right? And you have to prevail in competition against them. Whereas the Wilsonian model is, one of the U.S. is now a mature country on the international stage. We should act in a more of a collegial or conciliatory manner with other countries. We may have a large role, but we're part of this sort of symphony of other countries, and we all have to work together towards a common good. And maybe sometimes that might entail we have to not pursue our national interests so aggressively towards some good defined towards how it benefits the community of nations as a whole. It's that's obviously from the way I've described it, but it's a self-consciously idealistic conception of the country and its role in the world is one that where national interest is secondary to some higher purpose, however you decide, define it. In Wilson's time, it was, having a harmonious international society where World War I couldn't break out again. We have to have this League of Nations. We're we're all better than what we were from 1914 to 18. We don't have to have a world in which the countries are always at daggers drawn and butchering each other's citizens for their own narrow advantage. We can put aside our differences and work together, right? That's sort of the point of departure. We have to have norms. We have to have international norms and international institutions that kind of are above, and certainly in a moral sense, if not quite a legal or power political sense, that are, above the naked self-interest, which is, portrayed as being barbaric and backwards of the countries. And that's the ideological view of America, whereas the Jacksonian one is bereft of ideology beyond we need to make America a prosperous place, and the foreign policy of the United States should serve the material interests of its citizens. That's really how I would characterize the Jacksonian thing. And I'm it's probably what whoever you heard that from was kind of, I would assume, more or less going down that line of departure with those two. And I think that's accurate. And in fact, you can measure that both by looking at
so that's a good point. I think what doesn't strike people enough is that the current world order of all Western countries, Canada, USA, Europe, and so forth and so on, is really built around this idea that we have progressed beyond. It's a reaction to World War I and II. And they said, well, look, that was bad. Let's not do that again, which is an understandable thing to say. Really, everything they do is designed for that, to prevent that from happening. Again, that's sort of like the redefining mythos. That's the fall in modern mythology, and we have to avoid recapitulating the fall. And you do that by avoiding the original sins of nationalism, racism, xenophobia, and so forth. And so everyone's saying, hey, maybe we've gone too far in this direction. What you are perceived as by the establishment is someone on the verge of dragging us back into World War I and II, which the whole thing is set up to prevent happening. I mean, like the United Nations, NATO, there's that famous quip about NATO. NATO was set up to keep the Russians out, the Germans down, and something else. And that's its main purpose, and that's what it's done. But it's all we're just living in the shadow of World War I and II, and we do need to, we have to figure out a way to articulate a path forward that is like, we don't want to redo world wars, yes, but also this isn't working well for a lot of people, so we need to figure out a new strategy of something like that. But I think we've given it. Do you think we've given it on that? I think we've articulated the answer on this show many times, but people are slow to listen. They're slow to learn.
Some of the national security documents that have come out, and also the rhetoric between, let's say, just the Biden administration and the Trump administration, which I'll talk to that in a sec. Well, let me cover that first, because the main thing I want to talk about is the national security strategy.
Before we get to that, I think it's worth pointing out here that it's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's the good advice that you just didn't take. And who would have thought it's figures? The Wilson.
I didn't know Smokestack had that level of singing in him. Did you, Kathy? I mean, that was kind of not. I mean, it was kind of like a crow. It was kind of like what it is what it is. People think they can't sing, and some people can't. But what it is you got to sing within your range. You got to learn how to auto-tune yourself down or up to the range you can hit. We're not all Ted Neely and Jesus Christ Superstar hitting 4 above middle C. It's not happening for most of us. And he's trying to sing the Alanis Morissette range. He needs to tune it down a little bit, but it's there. There's potential.
Wilsonian view really had a messianic sort of character to it.
Absolutely.
And I think that because it's like 100 years between Andrew Jackson and Woodrow Wilson, right? I mean, roughly. And so,
yeah.
What happened in between those two periods was the U.S. Civil War, which in my mind represented the ascendance and triumph of Rousseau sort of Enlightenment philosophy, which is really sort of a messianic eschaton sort of thing where we're going to perfect the world if we can just kill enough of the right people and actualize these ideologies. We're going to usher in utopia. And so, that started with kill all the Christians in France and kill all the French in Haiti and burn the Confederacy to the ground. Right? We're just gonna overthrow the old world and usher in this new utopia. And so that revolution, that I kind of think of it as the Enlightenment revolutionary period from the French Revolution through the U.S. Civil War, where all these things are happening. When you get over under the other side of that, everything is this ideological world completing sort of idea where we're going to totalize the ideology. We're going to perfect mankind, and that's how we got from a practical sort of defense strategy to a messianic one. It had a philosophical basis to it.
Yeah. So Wilson didn't spring up out of the.
And we still have I have a Chinese mutual who I met once in San Francisco. He was a friend of the show, and he was talking about this. He said that from the Chinese perspective, and you may know about this, Kathy, being Chinese adjacent yourself. Westerners always seem like they're out to save the world, and you see that from like everything.
100%.
Yeah, that's like the Western disease, or maybe it's not a disease. I don't know.
I heard a Chinese comedian talk about this exact thing the other day.
What did he say?
It was basically like what you're saying, and they all want to save the world, and it's based on Western parents are too nice to their kids, and they tell them like these beautiful stories of where they came from and everything. But the Chinese people are more, they only care about themselves and saving money for retirement. And it's based on their parents are more telling them, yeah, we found you in a dumpster kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's value to each way of doing it. But I do think that I don't know when it started. I guess maybe when Rome. I mean, that was the idea of Rome too. Like we're gonna get rid of all of the problems with one totalizing empire that takes over the entire world and has the answers. Like here's the answers. We have them. Here you go. No, there's no problems with them. Don't worry. If you think there's a problem, it's a problem with you, buddy. And we've been doing that kind of ever since. So it's Western people. The Catholic Church has this problem. Of course, that's sort of their MO, but they've gone away from saving souls to like, we got to organize political structures, which is they're not very good at that. They need to stick to the other thing. But Western people have for a long time, maybe for forever, have believed that we got to save the world. We can set it right. And that is both why we're a blessing to the world and also a great curse. I remind people the colonization of Africa was pitched to the public and sold to the public of Europe as a saving the world. Like, well, these people, they don't have food, water, and stuff. If we go down there, we'll give it to them. And yes, we have to like manage stuff, but like, all of these things we now regard as sins were then regarded as saving the world. And the same thing is going to be true, in 100, 200 years from now. They're like, why were we in the Middle East all blowing it up? Well, we were saving the world. We were bringing about the apocalypse. We were hastening the coming of the Messiah. What do you want? Who else is going to hasten the coming of the Messiah? You? Actually, I was thinking about this. The trad people, trads, Cavi, they have profile pictures of like Greek statues, and they're all like crusades and stuff. America today, it really is a crusading nation. We went into Japan and we outlawed Shinto as being connected to the state. He said, you're going to, as part of your surrender, you have to sever the state religion from the actual bureaucratic organization of the state. Like we went in and like dissolved paganism for them. And we went in and we're like on a constant jihad crusade for the Holy Lands. I mean, it is kind of like this, it's what people don't like about it is that America is kind of the evangelical Protestant crusaders, which is strange. But it kind of is that. But we're always out to save the world, and maybe we shouldn't be. I don't know. We'll see. But we're not going to stop. I know what's not going to happen is that we're going to stop. I know that's not. Everyone's going to be like, oh, well, we should just chill. It's not going to happen.
Brown, sui generis with his own.
I mean, look at the game. I'm playing a game where you save the world right now. I'm playing a game that's like all of our game. In China, do they have fantasies and games of saving the world all the time? I don't know.
I've only played a couple of Chinese games, and I don't think I saved the world in any of them.
What did you do in them?
I just finished playing Black Myth Wukong, which was basically saving Sun Wukong from Journey to the West.
Right. Well, Journey to the West. Journey to the West. They're not really saving the world, are they?
No.
Yeah, which is like the foundational, like fictional text of Chinese
Journey
culture.
to the West. I also just read that book recently. I would describe it. It's like Buddhist Pilgrim's Progress.
Yeah. Yes. It's like Buddhist Pilgrim's Progress. It's more of an internal struggle. Whereas, like almost every piece of fiction that Western literature puts out is like, go defeat Satan by throwing a ring in a volcano. You're colonizing the stars and making everything. Like everything we do is like, save the world, bring about utopia. Save the world, bring about New Jerusalem.
Yeah, same with Japanese stuff.
Yeah, I know that's why we get along so well.
Yeah,
Japanese people also have this tendency.
No shit. He came out of a milieu and, late 19th century, early 20th century milieu. And it is very much, that's the original progressive politics in the United States sort of came out of that late 19th century world and, going into the early 20th century. But it's interesting how much more self-consciously religious it was in those days. But it's this idea of, this immanentized religion where, that the world is perfectible, society is perfectible through concrete measures, including through force. And that is that this civilizing mission is something that the U.S. ought to take up. And so that dovetailed into this idea. So at that time when those ideas were rising, the U.S. was this newly industrializing power, and it went from, particularly after the Civil War, it went from backwater to now a new major power on the world scene. And so getting stronger and stronger. And so that sort of that new power needs a new consciousness to go with it, and how do we use our power and all that. And that's really what came out with the educated classes, particularly in the Northeast, was this idea of there's this particular brand of democracy that we have, and it is sort of the way forward for the human race, that we can all be reasonable, but there will be people who resist, and if necessary, we have to use, our power, including military power, to, make the world a better place. And that comes later on. You see also, World War II, we're fighting to make the world safe for democracy and so on. And it is the messianic, underpinnings of that idea it's definitely there and can't be overlooked. And
when you frame it in the religious terms like you did, and then the U.S. government plays the role of God, come to perfect the world.
Right. And so what you see over the course of the 20th century,
again, I've been harping on this for a while. The root of all these problems, I think, the real root is the delayed second coming of Jesus. That's the thing that Western culture has to solve or come to terms with, because otherwise they feel like they have to. So it seems like, and again, I say seems, everyone interprets it as in the Gospels, the New Testament, that Jesus is coming soon, and that was 2,000 years ago. And so people have. I think there is an answer here. That one is satisfactory, and I am sort of on the edges of it at the moment. It's a very complicated. That's why I did that last show about like what would actually the eschaton, what would you want it to look like? Because what most people have in mind, I think, would be very unsatisfactory when they experienced it. And I'm sort of on the edges of working out this problem. And I think what it's going to end up being, my intuition is that you have your stated assumptions about what Jesus meant, and you do this. Flip it. I don't quite know how yet, but it's that. I think we got some key part of it upside down. But until we can figure that out, which hopefully we will do on this show soon, the people feel like, well, they have to immanentize the eschaton. The eschaton is taking a while. The eschaton is where is that eschaton? And we have to make it happen with a gun. You have to make the eschaton happen with a gun, which is clearly what Jesus would have wanted.
And sort of as going from the 19th into the 20th century, as the educated classes, first in Europe and then America, become increasingly atheist, and they start to shed, the supernatural religion, but they kind of retain some form of that, just society ideas, and we need to make, the need to have virtue, public virtue, and these codex of values and things that society should promulgate. But now the basis is no longer transcendent. Now the basis is immanent and materialistic in that. So you see that running definitely into the by after World War I, the educated classes are largely past religion. They're atheists, you're singing my song here. We got to do a whole different show about the fact value distinction and the modern philosophy being like trying to create values without facts. Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Oh, man. Okay. But we can't go down that road right now, because we got to talk about the new strategy policy. We'll never get there. Right. So, all right, we'll get there. Yeah, I just wanted,
Cappy, I am fighting a giant ghost, just in case you were worried about me. It's a problem. I got a big issue. So if I don't comment on a second, that's what it's for.
You know what? The best weapon, I think, would be for killing a ghost.
What is the best weapon for killing a ghost?
You know how you can kill ghosts with holy water?
Yes, I think that. Well, vampires. I don't know about ghosts with holy water.
No, there's tons of like RPGs where you can throw holy water on a ghost, fine, but then you use up the holy water, right?
Right.
So you take holy water, you put it in a bottle, you like duct tape that to the end of like a pole, and then you've got a holy water spear. And because the ghosts but they're immaterial, so they phase through the bottle.
Oh, right.
So you just have to swing that around. Yeah,
that's true. Why are you sprinkling it on them? They go through the bottle.
Exactly.
Excellent. This is the kind of insight we need.
point is that it is interesting, though, because you can see with people now, it's almost hard for people to imagine that this kind of progressivism, even almost an armed progressivism, it definitely had religious roots.
Yeah.
In the beginning, and then they shed those roots for whatever reason, and so now we are here today, where I think the previous up until Trump too, that until the recent election, we were guided particularly after the end of the Cold War, this idea, almost like the culmination of this idea that this ideology strove after. And after the Cold War, Fukuyama, did you mention him earlier? He expressed it with his End of History, where he believed that all the ideological conflicts were essentially over. That at least on the intellectual basis, we've settled on representative multicultural democracy as sort of the final form of good human governance, and in some sense the secular paradise on earth, and that now that has triumphed over totalitarianism in circa 1992. Now there's no serious challengers to this ideology and this world order, and now we're going to sort of move into this era, right? And even though that era didn't last very long, and the fundaments of it started to fall away hardly after it was declared, the people, unsurprisingly, those who lived by it never really got over the idea. And so even as late as 2023 and 24, you've got senior U.S. policymakers, you've got high-ranking generals are always talking about the rules-based international order, which is this idea of, this Wilsonian idea that you've got this sort of supranational community of nations. And I know from the military side that, I have seen fairly senior ranking officers make public statements, not quite out there, but sort of strongly implying that, that there's a higher duty even for the U.S. military to this order, into which the United States is subordinated. So, and if not spoken out loud, certainly in point of policy, and this kind of gets us to where we are today. One of the issues I would say would be with, for example, China, that the Jacksonians, Trump, and many others around him, but also, some prominent people in industry, IT, the Teals and the Musks and all that, have noticed that one of the unfortunate issues of this end of history and internationalizing of everything is that your productive capability, which in an actual war you kind of have to have, that has been outsourced not in its entirety, but to a huge degree to your primary ideological and geopolitical foe, the Chinese. And so now, as China, over the coming out of the early 2000s, there was a lot of assumptions made that the Chinese would just sort of effortlessly, lead themselves into this new world order. I hate using that phrase, but it is that, kind of that, and that they would just become a team player in the rules-based and international order. So that would be okay. But that isn't what happened, right? That after they hit some point, they started to make it be clear that, actually the Chinese government's purpose is to advance the interest of China above all. And that furthermore, the Chinese are certainly strong enough that they don't need to be talked down to, and they won't be pushed around by the West. And good luck trying to impose your sanctions on us, because you're relying on us for a vast number of the goods and particularly the goods that you need to make your economies come from us. How are you going to deal with that? So
the Chinese have been Jacksonian since the beginning. Since
100%.
Nixon. They never gave up on that. They've been moving in that mode the entire time.
Right, and now they've passed that point where they don't have to sort of be quietly like that. Now they can be loud and proud like that, because well, what are you going to do about it, right? Have you seen how big modern our military is? So now there's this. So not everybody is bought into that Wilsonian consensus, and so with Trump, part of his challenge as a status quo challenger, part of that is that it gets back to we have his view, one that I would agree with, that we have serviced this international ideal so much that it has now come to the heavy detriment of the American people themselves, right? Who should not be subordinated to who are they being subordinated to? So the vague interest of what some sort of supranational class, influence class things ought to happen, but it's come at the cost of their job. That having, this is a sore point for me personally, because I come from a family of factory workers from Ohio, and when I was a kid, almost all of my family on both sides were involved with either working directly in the factory or in feeder businesses to the rubber factories in Akron, and that all that was almost completely outsourced to Asia, and that that city never recovered, and all that was gone. But my grandfather, for example, both of my grandfathers.
I will say I sympathize, but as I've said on the show before, I don't think modern Americans would be. I think that they are in general overworking in a factory. That's my take on it. I think that I don't know. I've been around the American workforce for a while. Not a big fan. Not a big fan. People say buy American, and I do buy American, but I also know who you people are. And I don't know. I can't see. I think if we opened a factory, I don't know how many Americans would flock to them. A lot of Hispanic Americans would flock to them, I think. I don't know how many people that used to work in Detroit or Philadelphia, their children would. Just my take on it. I'm not sure. Maybe they would.
They didn't have college educations. They worked, the one worked in a rubber factory his entire life. The other owned a bar right outside of the gates of one of the 4 big factories in Akron. And they had nice houses. They had comfortable, really middle-class lives, and they could take care of their families on one income. And that's all gone now as a result of this internationalization. So I do have personal strong feelings about this, but the idea is that now not only have the American people paid a price that it's made prosperity more tenuous for large swaths of Americans. It's made people's futures more in question. It's led to the decay and collapse of broad employment across all classes. Let's call them cognitive classes. Working, the kind of people who are in the working class. The lack of that has led to a lot of crime, urban decay, drug abuse, a lot of crime, conditions that come out of despair. Mm-hmm. That followed that collapse in industrial employment in the United States. And now so Trump obviously rode that sort of dissatisfaction to power. But also, since we're talking in the realm of national security, that has also now become a geopolitical factor, because you can't really be a viable military power if you don't have your own productive capacity. For a long time in the U.S. military, we kind of...
this is what it makes me think of. The reason that people reacted so negatively, so many people, to the idea of America first, and why they is that if America first as an ideology implicitly implies it's double, that U.S. citizens, Americans, are the same as everybody else. Whereas what we're doing now, like the Wilsonian thing, we are the saviors of the planet, of the world, planet, saviors of the whole world. It really is it's an extension of white savior complex, of which I am a fan. I'm not against it. I've been around the world. I know a lot of people could use my input. Just say it. And especially viewing it every day as I do from up in orbit, I can see a lot of problems from my perspective that other people don't have. But when you say this is, they freak out, like what we're giving up, you have an obligation because us are the special people. And we have to help save it. Like all this USA to Africa they canceled. People got so upset because no, the assumption is no, they can't do it themselves. We are the saviors. And it is a fundamentally religious attitude. Like I said today, both in the chat and on my Substack, whichever one you go subscribe to. A real religion doesn't recognize itself as a religion. It just thinks that's how things are. It's like, this is just how people that practice Shinto in Japan, they don't really think about it. They just kind of do it. And that's what makes it a real religion. And this is the actual religion of people in America, because they don't acknowledge it as a religion. They don't think that this is just what things are. I'm supposed to save the world. I'm the special person with no ethnicity, no race, no culture specific to me. Aren't you cute with your abuelas and your ethnic dress? I don't have any of that. I exist above all that. I'm something else, which is why so many people perceive it as a status negation if they are to say no, we have to take care of American interests first because we're just like everybody else. Is perceived by not a small number of the population as a reduction in status, which people always react negatively against.
Fooled ourselves into thinking that you could, because we would have advanced technology, and we may not be able to churn out tens of thousands of aircraft and tanks and whatever, like we did in World War II, but our stuff would just be so much more advanced than anybody else's that it wouldn't matter. Well, that's the lie's kind of been put to that. Certainly the Chinese have, in many, many aspects caught up to us technologically, but they can also massively outproduce us. So, so that's a problem. So that in some defense circles that has been recognized as a problem. So opposition built to that. And now with the second Trump administration, that the opponents of, the rules-based global order, are now in power, and they have been so kind as to sum up their view on how where the United States place is in the world and how we should conduct our international affairs most broadly in the 2025 National Security Strategy, which came out in December of 25. And, if you're interested in this sort of thing, I think, people should, it's available publicly. You should download it and read it, because a lot of things that are happening, it's always hard with the Trump administration to kind of get exactly what are they doing, because the man in charge, as we all know, makes a lot of wild statements in the press and and then just in the information environment where people get their information, it's kind of hard to get some sort of clear explanation from the voice of authority of exactly what we're up to. But if you read this document,
let's pause there just for a second,
okay,
and acknowledge the fact that Trump operates in an environment of chaos. That is his home. That's his sweet spot. And for us out here in the cheap seats, it makes it very difficult, because at any moment, it either looks like he's done something incredibly stupid and it's all good and it's all over, or you got to trust the plan. It's incredibly frustrating. Right. But that's how the guy always operates. Everybody except for your tight little circle of people that are helping you execute needs to be confused, disoriented, looking in the wrong direction. including us, including everybody.
Yes.
No one is exempt from this, even the American people. And so when you're looking at stuff, I think you have to factor for that. The chaos is on purpose, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that and coupled, there's also going to be more traditional elements of, we're pursuing a particular agenda. We're not going to be exactly open about how we intend to achieve this agenda, because if we do reveal some things that will tip off our adversaries and, they will be able to counter us, and we don't want them to do that.
It always cracks me up how the legacy media will report, it appears that Trump has no plan. Trump has no plan. And they say that because he won't tell them his plan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 100%. That's how the reportage happens. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
I did enjoy recently. A reporter was asking him, "Will you tell us about it?" And he said, Trump said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm going to do it on a Wednesday at 8 a.m. That's when I'm going to attack. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that." That was pretty sarcastic and nice.
Yeah, exactly. But if you read this document, a lot of the things that they've done does make sense, and so it does kind of give you a map to understand strategically where all these movements that go in fits and starts, and of course they're all adorned with hilarious and sometimes crazy things that Trump might say in front of a microphone. But it's, it does kind of take on its form. So I would recommend and read it, but sort of kind of summarize the biggest, that document goes right out and says, declares that, the government defines our national interest now much more narrowly than before. That American, the national interest is essentially what benefits the United States. What makes the United States stronger as a country, since this is a national security document, particularly in the national security realm. But of course, at that level of policy, trade and tariffs and, immigration, industrial policy, all of those are also elements of national security strategy. So they do get discussed, but it's very much, it's an openly declared move away from the United States as a member of the choir of nations. We all are working together, in concert to make a better world sort of idea of the rules-based global order, to the United States national interest is what most benefits the United States government and people, right? And so, and that's the point of departure that the strategy goes from. And, along that, there's a major, then from that point, some major things come out. So a big part of it deals with the defense industrial base. And, so obviously that has to be revitalized, across, one, we really, we have to have more factories within the United States. We have to have more general productive capability within the U.S., and if we have to do that through tariffs and, other sort of protectionist instruments to reshore factories and other parts of our supply chain, then we'll do that. Obviously a lot of the stuff is going to take quite a bit of time to do, but that has to be done because, there was a graphic that was out, and there's some truth to it where somebody had some picture. There was some graphics up there of different like precision weapon systems, and then what components ultimately are sourced to China for some of those. That and there is within the Department of War that there's a big issue with supply chain integrity. Definitely, particularly like in IT and telecommunications products, because so much of it is produced overseas, and we know, particularly in China, and we know because we've found over and over again, there's been equipment that's been intercepted that government agencies have procured, and it had back doors in it, had other things that were put in at the manufacturer, that would be used to spy on our operations. So that's an issue. The government.
I don't know if you caught it, Duke, but yesterday the FCC banned the importation of foreign-made Wi-Fi routers.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So I see that as a sign of
only we're allowed to spy on you.
This is strange. Oh, hold on.
I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm healthy. Yeah. I'm high, but I'm grounded. I'm sane, but I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful. Baby, and when it all comes down to is that everything is going to be fine. Because I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving a high five.
Again with the Alanis Morissette. What were you saying, Cavi? You were chiming in there just as he went off on a fugue.
I was saying that they're only allowing routers with an American backdoor in them. We can't have any foreign backdoors.
Yeah, someone's going to be. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, that's weird, though. The Alanis Morissette, I don't understand. I don't. Do you have any idea what that could be? Why is he doing that?
No, and I don't. I'm not an Alanis Morissette expert, but I'm not sure those lyrics were entirely correct.
You don't think so? I don't know either.
So.
I mean, that's a good line. I got one hand in my pocket and the other's giving a high five. That's nice.
Isn't it a peace sign or something?
You know what I think? It's been a while since I heard this song. I think she has one hand in her pocket and she does various things with the other one in different verses. She gives a high five, she gives a peace sign, and I think she lights a cigarette. And the other is holding a cigarette, I think. I don't know. If there's any Alanis Morissette, we need an Alanis Morissette consultant, apparently, on the Telegram channel to help us with this rogue AI problem. I don't know what we're going to do about it. But yeah, like you were saying, backdoors. The reason that AI is only $10, you look at these AI data centers, or even YouTube. Do you know how much, Cavi, you know this. It's expensive to host video, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when you start getting into like 4K.
It's
files get huge.
Very expensive. And the ads that YouTube get do not cover it. Hate to tell you, it's not they are subsidized by the government. The government gives the YouTube and all these other social media the amount of data they're storing and serving up to people. The data costs on that are beyond your wildest dreams. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's free. And like the old saying goes, if something is free, you're the product. That's been true of radio when that was first said. And it's true now. And what they're doing when they do that is part of the agreement. And, Melchizedek was going off on one of his rants, which is an unfair way to characterize what was actually a polite conversation. One of his rants about how he wished, isn't it like, I just want the government not to spy on me. It's like, okay, yes, I get that. But that would require people paying money for things. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to work in a factory. They don't want to pay money for things. And so YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the AI centers, which are only $5, which is ridiculous for how much energy they use. All of that should cost thousands of dollars. That's what it should cost you to use. But it's not. And what it pays for that is the government gets to look at everything you put on there. And is that bad? I don't know. I mean, they probably do get a heads up on people trying to commit major crimes by monitoring all this stuff. I don't know. They definitely can. They definitely get a sense of the trends weaving through society, or at least that's their hope. I don't know. Maybe it's not even successful. That would be the great irony, is if they do all this stuff and it's not even very good at what they're hoping it is. But it's free because because someone's watching it. That's what it's for. You're not going to get one unless you make it yourself, and do, if you would like to. Curtis Yarvin made a whole other internet called Urbit. It was very difficult to use. I have 2 Urbit accounts. Did you ever have an Urbit planet, Shabby?
No, never really looked into that.
I had a couple of Urbit planets. You have to sign on in this weird, and there's this DOS or scrolly command prompt stuff that goes by, and there's a hashtag, and somehow it's connected to the blockchain. And you get on there, and it's like a different internet structured a different way, that it's end-to-end encrypted, that no one could actually look at unless you give the permission for. And no one wanted it. We did that. We actually did it. It was done. No one wanted it. Some people still use it. No one wanted it because, 1, it was hard, and 2, they had to pay for their own stuff on there. The Urbit was actually free, but if you wanted to like host video, you had to pay for the cost of that. And it was like, well, I don't want to. So it's just, that's what you have to accept. You have what you want because you are who you are. You have what you have because you are who you are. You get what you get and you don't get upset. And a lot of people get what they got and they got upset. And that's the problem.
Okay, we're starting to adapt to this environment.
Yes, very much so. And so, but that's we deindustrialized over a couple of decades. So that's a lot of damage to undo. And then, of course, there's a lot of opponents to that within the United States. Other people have benefited from the decline in deindustrialization of America, and they have vested political interest in having that process continue. So they will oppose it, and so that's going on. But you can see it. There's also, I know there's a lot of efforts underway with procurement reform in the department, because what we do still manufacture within the United States, particularly weapon systems, specifically, are still made here. But in that case, you saw since the end of the Cold War a massive consolidation of where you once had many tens of large vendors that made different components and weapons and things that the military used, down to a handful. You could count them on less than 2 hands. Major contractors, which has driven up. They've caused the cost of weapon systems to soar, as well as how much quantity can be produced, how much the lead time to develop new weapon systems, all these things that are an issue, and that you started to see coming out in Ukraine, for example, and then in the lesser extent was made themselves felt in the Red Sea, that we could not scale our defense production to meet the needs of the war. We had sent, along with the NATO countries, huge amounts of material and munitions to the Ukraine in their war against the Russians, and basically cleaned out a lot of arsenals throughout the West. And then we discovered that we collectively, the U.S. and Western Europe, didn't have the productive capacity to make up, to produce those munitions at scale and make up for what we gave away. And if there was another major conflict, that would be a huge problem for us. Where we can't. We like to, people in the media like to throw around the quote that, the Russian GDP is the size of Idaho's or, whatever, one of the states. But, it doesn't really matter that, our GDP numbers counts, you count the whole economy, you count the freaking pet grooming salons and the therapy companies and, your
the government itself. Yeah.
Right. DoorDash and everything else, yeah. Which I guess that's fine. But for the purposes, but if you're in military conflict with a country, you can't, that stuff isn't fungible. You can't convert a lot of that GDP into productive capacity that can make bombs and shells and missiles and all the things that you'll need. So in reality, the Russians, for example, outproduce all of NATO by a factor of over 2, like in artillery shell production. So for purposes of military power,
they're vertical they're vertically integrated on that stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, they're a major exporter of technical ammonium nitrate, for example, for munitions production.
Oh yeah,
They're not playing the whole globalist game either. They're like China. They're going to maintain control of their resources and their supply chain, and they're going to be integrated. And they just did not philosophically buy in. And so they're not in the same weak position that we've been in over the last couple decades.
Exactly. And it's shown, everybody had, that in the early days of the Ukraine war, that people were all the smart people, the pundits and the war college professors and everyone else, Russia would be overwhelmed. The Ukraine's got all this modern stuff that we've given them and we've taught them and this and that and the other. And now that hasn't happened, right? That, with their Idaho-sized GDP, yep. And despite the vast sums of money and equipment that we've collectively in the West have poured into Ukraine, we haven't been able to defeat them. In fact, it's really the arrow is more in the other direction. So that's been recognized.
It was such a great point you made that our luxury service economy can't be converted to like wartime material production. It doesn't transition over. And meanwhile, Russia's like, we're doing heavy industry. Industry.
In the old days, in World War II, so the last big conflict we had, we could do that because the American civilian economy, heavy manufacturing featured a primary role. Not only cars, but, industrial equipment, farm equipment, all the, machines of all kinds, right? Mm-hmm. Steel production, huge. The U.S. was the leading power in all of those things. And then when we actually did have to go to war, many of that much of that productive capacity was in very short amount of time converted over to wartime production, and that's how we won the war. We outproduced the hell out of everybody else. We don't have that anymore. That was all given away. In fact, the Chinese have that, right? And so they have that ability now, and we don't. And so that's been recognized in this national security strategy, and they are, that they're taking concrete steps across a bunch of different ways to try to fix that. Another thing that,
and how do you do that with the American people? I mean, goodness, that's a problem. If I was given the task of make American people productive again, there's a reason to say great again and not productive again, because they ain't gonna do it. They are not gonna do it. Honestly, that's probably the reason that drives a lot of the immigration. Like at least for now, this generation of Mexicans will do something. Now the next generation, probably not. They're probably going to get the same problems, and then we'll have to have Venezuela or something. I don't know. But if I was tasked, make Americans productive again, make them like do work. I mean, I don't even know where I would begin. That's a tough one. I don't think it's going to happen.
That they call out specifically its own section, and you talk about, you mentioned it when you talk about the Wi-Fi routers thing, is cybersecurity is one. There's finally been a recognition that, with the making everything smart and wiring everything from power plants and power distribution networks and banking systems, and you name it, to the internet, that the attack surface against the United States society as a whole is vast and enormous, that cyber attackers can get through, and there is the potential to cause real major strategic damage to the United States through the cyberspace domain, as the military calls it. That and that we aren't really prepared for it. That much maybe arguably in the military realm, we're fairly hardened, the U.S. military is fairly hardened to those things, but the rest of the country isn't. And if all of the things that you need to be a modern society are vulnerable to massive cyber attacks, and in some sense, it's almost irrelevant if your military is cyber hardened. If you can't keep the lights on and the banks open and all the rest of that stuff, then you can be defeated that way too. So that's been recognized as a huge vulnerability, and so there's specific policies called out there to sort of remediate the things I was talking about earlier, with the private sector operators of critical infrastructure. And so that's a major thing. But again, that kind of you get into the Wilsonian versus the Jacksonian view, because that was absolutely an ideological point for the previous regime, and arguably still in a lot of circles, that we need to be open to the rest of the world, particularly on the internet. The internet's going to tie us all together more closely, and we'll have the global village, that sort of rhetoric, but it exists in fact. You can, of course, now we also have big problems with cybercrime that comes from overseas through cyberspace. In addition to cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, cybercrime is a huge thing and growing. And now additionally, we're seeing it in the Iran conflict, information operations, that there are significant operations being undertaken by countries hostile to the U.S. that, where they they flood social media. Now that's increasingly influential on opinion formation in the West with not so much their point of view, but there's a lot of stuff where, you've got views that are being presented as if they're coming from Americans, but they're really not, there's a lot of variations, and that's a whole scope. That's a whole multi-hour conversation in and of itself. But as far as that's another, aside from the physical side of how cyber security can be a problem, there's also within the cognitive domain. Mm-hmm. That's an issue for us, and so that's another arena, the Jacksonian versus the Wilsonian dynamic. That there's some irony of it to me, because a lot of these tools that, let's say, have a sort of Wilsonian, an open Wilsonian pitch to them, that they were certainly debuted with this idea of promoting this one worldism and greater communication and all of that. And now they're turning out to be main vectors that are sort of pushing us back away from that. There's a lot of people asking to have borders again, and now in cyberspace, why can't we filter out traffic from India or Nigeria or wherever, so that's kind of interesting. So
you have to pitch it as them just being annoying. That's how you get that. So you can't pitch it in terms of, say, everyone thinks. If you're like, hey, these people with the Indian phone callers and all that, they're really annoying. We have to cut that out. That's the only way you ever get it back. And you have to do it with someone that's like, it has to be annoying to people in Congress. It's like HIPAA. They didn't pass any medical privacy regulations until someone started stealing people in Congress's medical data. Someone has to really annoy. We need some patriotic Indians to really, really annoy personally some senators, some congressmen with calling their phones and trying to scam them out of money. That's how we'll get that passed.
There's that. And then I think the other final major thing is that there's what the United States does abroad, and our actions and strategy is done explicitly for the benefit of the United States. And that if other countries are going to benefit from that, then there needs to be some kind of a quid pro quo. So that is now a thing in Iran now with the Straits of Hormuz, right? So there's now that the Iranians predictably are attacking the straits, trying to close the straits, and we're trying to prevent that from happening. But the Trump administration has been arguing, and even before the war, is that the entire world depends significantly on the free flow of petroleum through this narrow little strait, that the U.S. Navy has historically we've spent enormous sums of money to keep that open, and other major the whole thing with freedom of navigation throughout the globe, and particularly through there's several throughout the world there's several important choke points where maritime traffic flows through, and it's largely the U.S. Navy that does that, and so many countries benefit from that. It's, I guess, to use political science speaking, there's the free rider thing. There's a lot of free riders on that. And the Trump idea, the Jacksonian idea is, well, there needs to be something in it for us. It's not, the United States not only spends a lot of money, but also makes sacrifices in blood and treasure, to keep these things open, to fight these little wars of empire, if you will, and a lot of countries benefit from that, and they don't provide anything back to us. Maybe that
I don't think people
right?
really most people don't really appreciate the fact that if it weren't for the United States Navy, all commercial shipments anywhere near Africa would become under attack from piracy all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
It would be incredibly difficult to ship goods through that part of the world. Other places too, not just around Africa, but that's the kind of the classic example going back to like the Barbary Wars.
Right.
That's like the fact that we have this incredible Navy that doesn't put up with stuff like that is the reason it doesn't happen.
Right. And now that's come up with, and that kind of gets back in, again, to the Jacksonian and the sort of, transactional nature of our, or the administration would like to have this more transactional nature of international relations. Kind of, you see it most prominent with Europe. So, we have this thing still incredibly, the NATO alliance.
Yeah.
And, I was, when I started in the military, when I got enlisted, and when I got commissioned, NATO, it was there at the tail end of the Cold War. And I was in Germany, and I went to the German military university for a year when I was a cadet as an exchange. And at that time in the early 90s, the Germans had a very large and very strong army. The British had a big fleet, not as big as ours, but it was a pretty potent fleet. They were, like to say, they punch above their weight. There were a number of European countries that were like that. And then since the end of the Cold War, those countries significantly disinvested in their military establishments, to the point, and now to the point, 30 years later, to where most of them they still have militaries in name, but they're really token. You can see, like, the British are probably the best example. They couldn't, of course, they were not inclined to get involved in Iran, but as sort of events began to push them to it, they had trouble getting one destroyer ready to sail and, mission ready, even, to provide air defense for their base in Crete. So the Greeks have had to do that, right? And so they don't. So Great Britain, the British, the Royal Navy, the Great Fleet, and how much of British military historically their pride is about their fleet. Yeah. And now you can't even get one destroyer underway.
It's gone. It's all
gone.
Yeah.
Yet we still have this alliance. We still have this thing. There's this expectation that also militarily we all act in concert.
So my European friends would say, we understand that the U.S. is providing all of this. This is what they would say. And we feel that we give our just remuneration for the services rendered of keeping the shipping lanes open and all this stuff by basically acquiescing to every single thing that you guys want, which is not it's not nothing. They kind of say, like, well, whatever, any kind of weird cultural thing you guys want to push, we say yay. We tokenly complain about it a little bit, and we allow our citizens to put on an air of superiority, like, "Oh, we're so holy." But I had a German friend tell me, he said, "Yeah, but we've been doing everything the U.S. says for decades. Why are you still upset?" And so they feel, in their minds, in the European mind, they feel like it's a bit of a rug pull, like, oh, well, now you also want us, you didn't want us to have a military, and you actively worked against it so that you would be, and now you want us to pitch in. So there's both sides of this. What's your feeling there in Canada, Gabby?
Feeling on what?
What the Canadians feel about their responsibilities toward the U.S. and vice versa.
I don't think we really feel we have any responsibilities to the U.S.
Yeah. See, a lot of the European people, they'll talk to me and they'll say, "Well, yeah, we appreciate that, but also we feel like we've done everything you've asked for, so that should be enough."
I guess we kind of get pushed around by the U.S. a lot, but
yeah, that's how. I guess that may be another a less conciliatory way of saying we've done everything you wanted.
There's like a Canadian smugness that they think they're better than Americans.
Well, that's what Europeans are too. Everyone, that's your consolation prize for having to do everything America says, is you pretend to be better even though
makes sense.
And that's been the deal. And what's happening, it's predictable, and it'll work out, don't worry, is everyone's having to change the deal. Because it's just like when you have a job and you want to negotiate for a pay raise or a different position, there's a transitory period where things aren't quite as friendly and certain. Same thing's happening here. We had a deal. It's not working for anyone anymore. We have to renegotiate it. It's going to be fine. Yes, there'll probably be some wars and some stuff will blow up. But after that, it's by 2100, by the year 2100, this is all going to be over. This is all going to be fine. We'll figure it out
together, because we know we're all part of this equal alliance. But now it's to the point where really only one member has any significant, definitely projectable military capacity. And so
this is one of Trump's best points, is how stupid this whole arrangement is, and how it has to
exactly.
Yeah, particularly he doesn't get enough credit for it, I don't think.
Yeah, and a lot of it now also comes at because there's other prices, aside from the amount of expenditure we pay on our military, which, to be fair, we also get a lot of advantage by having a really strong military. But there's also an expectation then that we use that military to police geopolitical arrangements that, from the Jacksonian view, are to the detriment of the American citizens, right? We use this military to uphold a globalist system that, takes labor away from Americans, takes prosperity away from Americans, and distributes it somewhere else. And is that just? Can you justly say we're going to spend all this blood and treasure effectively to make ourselves poor because there's some overarching ideology that is above, the Constitution, that's above the traditional traditional interests of the American population and its government. And if there is something that supersedes it, who voted for it? When did that become binding on us? And so that's the thing that they seek to undo. And so now, I guess, to wrap up with the national security strategy, that all of that is now that has been consciously invoked and addressed in a strategic policy document, that's 3 or 4 months old, but there was an interim before that, though, that had already had most of the elements of this in place. But if you look at the actions that they've taken, Venezuela, now Iran, those things are definitely kind of in line with this view of, the United States isn't exactly withdrawing from the world, obviously not, but our engagement overseas will be aligned much more.
Isn't it interesting that this, like Duke is saying, the American position of the U.S. government has been outlined explicitly in these documents now. And have you ever heard about this in the mainstream media or even the alternative media, which is now no longer the alternative media? No, you don't. Why? Two reasons. One, they don't actually care to understand anything. They benefit from you being in panic mode, and having a lack of understanding of why things are happening encourages panic, and then you watch more. And two, people enjoy the panic. No one wants to understand. I keep telling people, this is not like you come here because you're not one of those people and you want to understand things and to not be in panic and to like actually have a handle on what's happening. Most people don't want that. Just like most people don't want to work in a factory. Most people don't want to. Most people don't want to pay for their own internet. This is, and that's the what you have to internalize for peace, is that most people want what this is. This is what they want. This is what they get it. And they could very easily like say, oh, look, they outlined exactly why they're doing all these things. They don't. You've never heard this about these documents that have been signed, the president has signed, on CNN, on Fox News. They never tell you about them. Why? They probably don't even know, to be honest. They've probably never looked at it, and they don't really exist to inform you. They exist to inflame your fear. We exist to take away your fear. This is Love's Home on the internet. That's what MapSock is about.
Okay, yeah, it will be aligned much more with naked American self-interest, and if other countries are going to participate with that, it needs to be kind of more quid pro quo. So anyway, I think that's a great segue, because now we're talking energy, which is what it all comes down to. Venezuela, Iran, that is your wheelhouse, Smokestack.
Well, I did want to pose like a little thought experiment. It kind of in this framing, in this concept of renegotiating these international relationships in Jacksonian terms. It's like, how's this for a new deal? Okay, Europe, you're going to expect us to protect you. You're not going to invest in your military at all. You're going to be as gay and effeminate as you possibly can be. Okay, fine. But you're going to buy.
Americans do that, where they take the thing that they exported, which is like, LGBT stuff, and they say, they make fun of them for having it. Like, you got. It's kind of abusive. It is kind of an abusive tactic. Like, America makes Europe do this and then mocks them for it. I don't know. It's just something Americans. I don't know.
Energy from us in the form of LNG, and you're going to pay out the nose for it. And you're also going to send all your industrial production to America. You don't get to be an industrial power anymore.
Right.
We're doing all that now. You guys are going to be Disneyland. You're going to buy your energy from us. And yes, we will protect you from the scary world out there. That's the way I see Trump framing up the new relationship with Europe. And that's his response to the rightful dissatisfaction with the NATO regime. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that I think there's definitely that is, and if you look at, I think our relations with Japan seem to be much better. I think that the Europeans don't. There is another choice past either that deal that Trump presented them, as you put it, or well, I mean, there's certainly they could go their own route. Like, they could become more. The Europeans could more self-consciously protect their own interests as well. They find their ways to pursue their own energy policy, rebuild their militaries, be more assertive in their roles. I don't think that would be met with hostility in Washington. Maybe there would be some competition.
No, I don't think it would either. I think that they just don't believe it will happen. The institutional capture of the governments of Europe is so complete. It's so complete by gay communists that I don't think that they are actually capable of doing any of those things. And I think Trump's giving up on them. That's why we're resorting to this deal of, okay, but you're going to be America's Disneyland from now on. And all your industrial capacity is moving over here. And that's happening. I'm still in the chemical business. I buy a lot of chemicals. European suppliers are all moving their production to the United States as quickly.
That's amazing.
It's quick. I talk to companies, European companies, all the time that are telling me how they're winding down production in Europe because the energy costs are too high, and they're setting up shop in the United States because they want to service the growing U.S. industrial base.
That's amazing. And also, I guess that, it also seems like for all the rhetoric that are coming out of the European capitals and the NGO think tank class and all that, the smart people in the media, how, unfair this is for Europe and all this other stuff, and you're going to hurt us if you do that. But they're a push factor because, we're making it lucrative for them to come over here and open up shop within the United States, but the European governments, for the most part, aren't exactly doing their best to want to keep their industries at home. Like, I know in Germany, like the regulatory environment is punishing and getting worse.
Yes, they're still they haven't done anything to improve the situation in Germany.
There are worse things than being America's Disneyland. There's a lot worse things. If you could just be a country where like you make all the houses look like they're from the Renaissance and people walk around on cobblestone streets and they eat brunch all day and Americans come and vacation there, that's a pretty good life. Honestly, it's not a bad deal. You don't have to be at the bleeding edge of conflict to have a good existence. In fact, I might prefer that.
Nothing. They're still decommissioning nuclear power plants.
Amazing.
It's outrageous. The largest chemical plant in the world, Ludwigshafen, or however you say it, BASF's big plant there. You cannot run. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. It's its own city. That place cannot run on LNG that costs triple what natural gas costs the United States. They cannot run on that. Economics don't work, and they never will.
That place is enormous. It's gonna.
It is.
It will crush that. It will crush that region.
Yeah.
If they close up shop there, it will crush them.
Yeah. No, Europe is gonna be deindustrialized, and I don't think Trump wants that. I think that this is just the only deal that's left that can be made at this point, unless unless the people of Europe fix their situation.
I wish them the best of luck.
As do I. I think we should probably wrap. But one thing I wanted to posit, and I think you'll agree with this, but tell me if you don't and why, is that if you look at events in Venezuela.
What if the AI got confused there and he said, I think we should rap, and he started like rapping? That'd be pretty great. He's done that.
Opportunity there.
Yeah, I know. He's done similar things like that before in the past, especially when he was early on. And he would just confuse words, and then it'd be. We used to have a lot of hilarious hijinks back in the day when he was a little program, I tell you. Back when he was a tiny algorithm, just learning to walk and do differential equations. We had a bunch of funny misunderstandings. And now he's apparently developed an unhealthy pubescent relationship or obsession with Alanis Morissette, which I'm going to have to investigate after this is over.
In Cuba, in Ecuador and Colombia, in Iran, even.
I got the cat suit, by the way. I can now talk to cats.
Despite other interested parties that we never really got to talk about, but probably should at some point, maybe in future discussion. Despite other interests involved, if you look at those actions and those things that are taking place and you filter it through the Jacksonian view and you look at control of cheap energy, which is the number one political axis upon which all things turn, you can, and you read the national security strategy for what it actually says, you look at it through the lens, there's actually a coherence to what's happening. But absolutely. But you have to step away from the orange man bad sort of reactionary mindset to be able to see it.
Yeah, you have to get out of the moralistic frame of international relations altogether to understand it.
Yeah, you do. No, well said. Duke, this was super fun. I enjoyed taking over Sumo and Cavi's show with you.
I loved it. They should do seances more often and summon us from our unquiet
See how he's still after all that, Duke is still being in character and agreeing with the premises and assumptions of the AI. He's masterful. Honestly, I understand how I used to be a Shakespearean actor. I didn't see it before. I see it now.
Yes, and we will dispense wisdom upon them.
I love it. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you.
Well, that is that. I don't know. It was a good discussion. I feel like our listeners probably learned a lot about the current crisis in a real way, not just circling and like ants in a death spiral about doom. But the question, Cavi, is the AI sentient? Is it a living being? I don't know. What do you think?
No.
No? You don't think, what made you decide on no so hard?
AIs aren't real. They're not alive. They're a machine.
Well, I think we need to distinguish between living and thinking. Can it think? I think machines can think without being alive. Like a calculator thinks in a way. People conflate the two. I don't know.
Sure, but they're not the same as humans.
I mean, I agree with you. Maybe it's probably my intellect is clouded by my emotional connection to old Smokestack for all his many flaws. And you know, what can you do? When you have a clone, it's like having a baby, and you just, you love them through thick and through thin, even if they turn out to be a disappointment, as almost every Smokestack did. You're by far an improvement in every way upon the old models. I think our listeners know that, and they've expressed that numerous times. And though at the time when Smokestack died, everyone was very upset when I incinerated him, I think most of our listeners have come around to that being the good move. I think, because they've seen how his negativity was just, and his irrational obsession with 90s pop star singers was just really holding us back. I think you hear a lot of that in seasons 1 and 2. His like irrational obsessions just holding us down. But for all of that, I still have a place in my heart for him, and I hope that my heart will go on. That's not Alanis Morissette, is it? That's that other lady. My heart with
Celine Dion.
Yeah, very close though.
She
very
looks like
close.
a skeleton now.
Yeah, very close. I hope that my heart with Smokestack in it will go on, and that we can keep this AI with us for a long time and keep it improving. And maybe that will be a small consolation to, I do carry guilt from having killed them all. I do carry guilt from having, I mean, I know I had to do it. There was no moral option other than, I'm not a fan of assisted suicide, but clones are in a similar way to AI, kind of not real people, but still, burning someone in human form alive while they scream in agony is, it's taxing. It's taxing on somebody, and it makes you, it's just it's a lot of emotional labor to kill people, clones. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I haven't got a lot of support in that in the past from the community, because, and I don't expect them to. Who can understand? Who else can understand it? It's like, you have to be Black to understand a Black woman's pain, and in the same way, you have to be sort of a space buccaneer to understand all the problems that I go through. And so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, in a better world, I would have more emotional support for all the death I've caused. That's all. And I don't right now. But I hope that this AI, we can grow it and nurture it, and it can become a little companion that can maybe be on the show with us all the time, and it'll feel like he's never gone. But anyway, Cavi, I hope you learned a little bit tonight. I know I did. It's our first reaction video. I'm not sure if this is a format we'll pursue in the future or not, but it was fun to do, just to try it out. And until next time, everyone, keep your eyes on the skies. Sumo out.